Some of the functions of the memory T cells, they retain the memory of antigens after the first exposure and spread throughout the lymphoid tissue and are released quickly in the circulation if the same antigens enter again. That means when it is the exposure of the same antigen, and then the secondary response take place, and in this the higher amount of these antigens get antibodies get activities, and the memory T cells are activated so highly, and they are helping in releasing in relief from that of the antigen and help in mounting a quick immune response. The integrated immune response, there is a different arm of the defense system, do not act in the isolation. There is always a need to do the activity along with innate immunity and adaptive immunity in the coordinated way. And the humoral immunity and the cell mediated immunity also act in the coordinated way manners. Then other is the self-tolerance. Here the self-tolerance means many molecules having the antigenic properties are present in our body also act against these self-antigens. This is called the tolerance, and tolerance to the self-antigens is not known as the self-tolerance. And suppressed T cells have some of the roles in the self-tolerance, and this suppress the immune reaction against the self-antigens. But there is a second and more important mechanism. Newly formed lymphocytes are processed during the fetal life. The purpose of this uh, processing is of twofold: to allow only the immunological competent lymphocyte to mature, and the other is to eliminate those lymphocytes that can react to the self-antigens. So the selection is taking place at that region. The processing of the T cells, here the developing T cell express the genes for the TCR, CD4, and the CD8. Some of the TCR are incapable of the recognizing any self-MSC proteins. Such TCR would be functionally useless if allowed to mature and developing. And then here is the positive selection. In this positive selection, developing T cells are first subjected to the positive selection if the TCR and the CD8 bind to the sub-MSC first proteins. The cell is allowed to mature into the cytotoxic T cells. An expression of CD4 gene is suppressed. Whereas if the TCR and CD4 bind to some uh, MSC class second protein, the cell is allowed to mature into the helper T cells, and expression of the CD8 gene is suppressed. Whereas the negative selection, in this negative selection, the positively selected cells are subjected to negative selection. If the TCR binds some self-antigens and the self-MSC complex, the TCR is pushed into the apoptosis. Thus, the T cell capable of acting against the self-antigens are get eliminated from this negative selection.